Emily DeGrice. I live in Aiken, South Carolina. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I've been involved with Moms Demand Action for about 2 years now. The one thing I love about Moms Demand Action is our survivor network and how we really find that personal, connection of the ripple effect of gun violence. It's not just the mother that lost her son. It's also the neighbor that watches that mother who lost her son and that can't lose that feeling. Like, I have a panic every time I meet a mom, and I hear survivors all the time say, you don't want to be in this club. And it's true. I don't. I have 3 boys, and I don't want to be in that club. I don't want to be in that club. I don't want to be in that club. I don't want to be in that club.
Hi, my name is Missy Hook, and I'm a victim advocate with Aiken Public Safety. I've been with the department this will be my 12th year now. I've recently gained the position of victim advocate last year. And just the short amount of time that I've been working as victim advocate, I have noticed a change in the gun violence. Gun violence is very prevalent in Aiken. It's not something that we can deny. I have victims of attempted murder, shootings into dwellings, shootings into vehicles, just shooting in the general direction of people. We have seen a recent uptick in murders involving gun violence. I know that we've had 4 so far this year. Meeting with the families of these victims is always very hard. It's heartbreaking to see how much they've been affected by this trauma and someone being taken from their life. And this is something that's going to affect them for a lifetime. I try to give them as many resources as I have with counseling and things like that, but I know that there's always going to be a part missing from their lives that I'm not going to be able to give them back. I just want to help them on their pathway to justice as much as I can. Most people only think about victims during the arrest and during the trial, but this is something that will affect them for their lifetime. This is something that I will follow up with them for. Once you're a victim with me, you're a client of mine for life, so I stay with you after the fact. Most people only think about the victim's family, but this is a big problem with the defendant's family as well. The defendant is choosing to hurt everyone that he loves, not only the victim and the victim's family. This is going to affect them as well. This is something that they'll carry with them through their life as well. When the defendant decides to commit an act of gun violence, they're basically agreeing to hurt everyone in their life. And they really need to ask themselves, is that worth it? Gun violence is a problem in our community, and we have to get together to change the norm. If we sit back and do nothing, this will continue and will probably get worse. We need to have a change. We need to face the violence and make a change.
November 15, 2013, a Friday night that I never forget. It was kind of raining. It was kind of chilly. I got a phone call that night from his girlfriend. I won't use her name at the time. I just said I got a call from Patty. The phone rang 3 times, and I was like, Patty, I don't know where Nate at. Patty, I don't know where Nate at. But the 3rd time I answered the phone, I said, I better answer it. I said, hello. She said, Mom, you heard what happened to Nate? He's dead.
August 4th, 2000, went home and found her dead. Didn't quite understand what took place until the things started coming together, and just was a total shock. Didn't know what to think about it. Your average person don't deal with this sort of tragedy.
Back in 1976, my dad was murdered in Aiken, in the city of Aiken.
I got there that night, it was like a TV scene. It was so many policemen and so many people, and the crime scene. tape was there. Nate was sitting on the porch in his community, a best friend porch. We had 3 people came in that night and was shooting. 3 people were shot that night. 2 of his friends survived. Of course, Nate didn't. He had just got his CDL license. His bags was packed to go pick his truck up that on Sunday. He was shot and killed that Friday for no reason, senseless gun violence. He was a very nice young man. He was a mama's boy, my baby.
Okay, Jessica was a fun-loving young lady, beautiful, enjoyed life, her family, her friends. Um, I don't think she realized one day how she was going to touch her community. She was a very special young lady that was given to us for a brief period of time.
I was thinking earlier that it was 43 years ago, a little over a week, when my dad was murdered. And 43 years, in 43 years, I will never forget. I haven't forgot. I will always remember. There will always be triggers, places I go or people I see or things I do that will make me remember him and remember those awful times.
I was thinking that what could I have did? Did I do something wrong? But that night I would have did anything to save him. But the people that he be around, the young men, they wasn't no gang bangers. They wasn't no bad boys. Kind of in my community, they was jealous. And he was a hard worker. He worked at Kroger grocery store for the short time that he lived. And so many people, it hurts the community, but no one would talk. It's bittersweet. No snitching. It took me 5 years to get the no good plea deal, but I had to take that because no one talked. Everyone is scared.
Of course, I look at that today with her friends at the time, you know, where they're at in their lives, and I look at where she would have been possibly today, you know, married, children, a career, but I've accepted it. There's no going back. I know she's in a much better place than here, and she don't have to worry about this sort of thing ever happening.
Yeah, I think with me, I told myself that I was hurting the least, that my mother was his wife, so clearly she was hurting. And he was very close with my brother. They shared the sports thing together, and he was 13, 3 years younger than me. So he was hurting more. And I always told myself they were hurting more than I was. And so I felt it my responsibility to do all I could do to try to help them, through this difficult time.
From the investigation, the shooter, he was looking for somebody else that he knew and went to school with Nate. But he said that night he was shooting anybody he see. It was 3 of them came in there, and Nate was sitting on the porch. He didn't have time to run. So he shot Nate 4 times in the upper body, looking for someone else.
This was just not one family destroyed, it was 2 families destroyed in all this by a poor decision that was made. And all it takes is one decision to destroy your whole life. And then an innocent person's life also that might be involved in that, such as Jessica.
But one thing in our story, everyone was kind of dealing with it differently based on how old they were. My brother was 13 years old, a bad time to lose a father. And my mother, who was older, the wife, and now responsible for these 2 children on her own and alone. So everyone was on their own path to getting where they needed to be. And we struggled for many, many years. My brother was estranged for over 30 years.
I saw him in January at the court. He didn't look at me. I did ask him why. And I told him everything about Nate, which he knew because he went to school with Nate. He played football with Nate. And I just kept saying, why? I know his father. I didn't talk to his father that day, but his father did talk with my daughter. And he said he wouldn't bother me because I was highly upset. Yeah. And I spoke in the court, and I did say, yes, I am mad.
I mean, I don't think these perpetrators understand or realize the impact they're putting on people. It's a lifetime impact. Jessica's sisters, I had to understand it just wasn't me and her father. They were impacted. She had sisters that were also impacted. And that carries on down to the generations. Now they've had children that Jessica didn't get a chance to see, but they're being told, Aunt Jessica, this is, your Aunt Jessica this, your Aunt Jessica that.
We have these criminal cases and we're helping people through this difficult time, but there's so much that goes on during and after, and a lot of it will go on forever. And I think the big difference comes in how we're able, and I say able because not everyone is able. Everybody's got a different level of understanding and an ability to cope. But how we're able to deal with it, to process it and deal with it will determine the kind of lives that we'll lead and the kind of life the people around us will have.
And his grandmother had got his clothes, and he had them on that night. And then we was like, why didn't you put on your new clothes? And I can remember just as good, he had on some Timberland boots, a checkered shirt she had bought him, and some khakis. But he laid across the bed. He didn't go anywhere that night. And we was wondering why would he put it on. But he was so proud and happy with his career.
But I, as her mother, I like to talk about it and share it because there's people out there dealing with the same thing and they can't deal with it. At Christmas time, I still hang a stocking with her name on it. So that's hung every year. It's been 19 years, so things kind of dwindle. But as mom, I still do that.
Very, very difficult times, very challenging times. And the thing I wish for the most is all the time that we lost trying to figure it out. We lost a lot of time just trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. But again, this is 1976. There was no victim advocacy. There was no one calling us to tell us what was going on, no counseling, no nothing. So I'm hoping now that we have those abilities, it's helping people, in their growth, and hopefully they're not having to suffer. There will be suffering, but hopefully they're not having to suffer quite as much for quite as long.
The favorite thing about it, he would have been working for Swift Trucking Company. And a lot of times when I see Swift Trucking Company, I would blow a kiss. Hey, Nate. But I wait till it passed by because I don't want the truck driver to think that I'm blowing a kiss at him. So that's my way of it. It makes me happy and smile that Nate is like what I'm doing and he support what I'm doing.
It's heartbreaking to see how much they've been affected by this trauma and someone's being taken from their life. And this is something that's going to affect them for a lifetime. I try to give them as many resources as I have with counseling and things like that, but I know that there's always going to be a part missing from their lives that I'm not going to be able to give them back. I just want to help them on their pathway to justice as much as I can.
It seems that in this fast-paced world of internet, social media, and all of that, we seem to get desensitized to the real impact of violence. But when we look into the face of violence, we meet mothers, fathers, children, wives, siblings of those who have been lost to senseless violent acts. And when we begin to meet those people and really hear their heartstrings and hear their beautiful memories of their loved one, it really begins to put value and it begins to put things into perspective. I really believe that it doesn't matter which side of the equation you weigh in on violence, it still impacts us. It still hurts. Whether you're the mother of the child that was lost or the mother of the child that committed the act, it is painful, it impacts our families, and it impacts our community. We have to be mindful that even in delivering services to our community through law enforcement and victims advocates, we have to be mindful that we are working with families, people who actually had relationship with people who have been victims of violence. We can't ever lose that humanness and lose that touch. Because it's in the face of violence that we find the resolve to find the answers to stop it. We have to continue to face the underlying causes, and we have to continue to work together to make sure that we don't continue to look into the tear-stained faces of mothers and children and families who've lost their loved ones. We have to confront it head on, and we have to work together.